Nobody laughed out loud when Dr. Nadia Okonkwo entered the conference room. They did not need to. The way their eyes moved past her, the way conversations continued as if she had not arrived, said everything. She found her seat at the far end of the table. The chairs were built for species twice her size. Her feet did not touch the floor. As I was saying, Director Vrax continued, his scaled face turned toward the senior researchers. The excavation in Sublevel 9 has revealed something extraordinary. Nadia leaned forward. She had spent 3 months on Station Helix 9. 3 months of being ignored, dismissed, and assigned to tasks that a cleaning drone could perform. But she was still a xenoarchaeologist. She still cared about discoveries. The holographic display flickered to life. A massive door filled the image. Ancient symbols covered its surface, spiraling inward like a frozen whirlpool. Architect construction. Chief Archaeologist Senna announced. Her 4 arms gestured elegantly at the display. Preliminary dating suggests this vault has been sealed for approximately 2 million years. Whispers filled the room. The architects were legends. A precursor civilization that had vanished long before any current species had learned to make fire. Their ruins dotted the galaxy, but most were empty, dead, picked clean by time. A sealed vault was different. A sealed vault meant treasures. Security Commander Bragg has attempted standard entry protocols, Director Vrax said. Without success, Bragg shifted his massive stone skin body. The door does not respond to cutting tools, energy weapons, or molecular disassemblers. It is not merely locked. It is waiting. Waiting for what? Senna asked. Nadia studied the symbols on the display. Something about them tugged at her mind. The pattern was not random. It flowed, shifted, almost breathed. She had seen similar patterns before in her research on architect psychology. If I may, Nadia said. Nobody looked at her. The architects were known for their, "We have already consulted the relevant literature," Senna interrupted. Her voice carried the patient tone one might use with a slow child. Perhaps you could focus on cataloging the minor artifacts from Sublevel 7, Dr. Okonkwo. That would be a more appropriate use of your particular talents. Nadia felt her face grow warm. Around the table, a few researchers exchanged amused glances. The fragile little Earthborn, trying to play with a real scientist. She closed her mouth and looked down at her hands. The meeting continued. Plans were made. Resources were allocated. High Scholar Dennick, the galaxy's foremost expert on architect technology, would arrive within the week. He would solve the mystery. He would open the door. He would receive the glory. Nadia was not mentioned again. That night, she sat in her small quarters and stared at the image of the vault door on her personal screen. Her grandmother's journal lay open beside her. The pages were worn soft from decades of handling. "They will try to make you small," her grandmother had written. "Stay soft anyway. Softness is how water wears down stone." Nadia touched the words. Her grandmother had been a teacher in a village where girls were not supposed to dream of universities. She had dreamed anyway. She had persevered. She had sent her granddaughter to the stars, and now that granddaughter sat alone on an alien station, wondering if she had made a mistake. The vault door symbols shifted on her screen. Nadia blinked. She rewound the recording. Watch again there. A subtle change, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. The patterns were not static. They were responding to something. She pulled up the station's sensor logs, cross-referenced them with the vault recordings. Her fingers moved quickly, her mind racing ahead of them. The symbols had shifted during the meeting, during the exact moment when Bragg had described his failed attempts to force entry. They had shifted again when Senna had spoken to the architects with casual dismissiveness, and they had shifted a third time when Nadia had tried to speak and been silenced. The vault was listening. Nadia sat back in her chair. Her heart pounded in her chest. The architects had not simply locked their vault. They had created a test, and everyone on this station was failing it. She should tell someone. She should report her findings to Director Vrax, to Chief Archaeologist Senna, to anyone who might listen. But they would not listen. They never listened. Her screen flickered. A station-wide alert appeared. "Attention, all personnel. Anomalous energy readings detected in sublevel 9. The vault is exhibiting increased activity. All non-essential staff are advised to avoid the area. Nadia stared at the alert. Then she looked back at the vault door, at its shifting symbols, at its patient waiting that IT was waking up, and she was the only one who understood why. She saved her research to a private file. She closed her grandmother's journal. She lay down on her narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, the experts would arrive. Tomorrow, they would try to force their way in with bigger tools and louder voices. Tomorrow, they would fail, and Nadia would watch and wait and hope that someone, eventually, would be ready to listen. The station hummed around her. Somewhere far below, an ancient door pulsed with light that had not shone for 2 million years. The IT was waiting for something. Nadia was beginning to suspect she knew what. High Scholar Dinnick moved through the station like he owned it. His Torvani scales gleamed with expensive oils. His robes cost more than Nadia earned in a year. His voice filled every room he entered, leaving no space for anyone else. Primitive construction methods, he declared, studying the vault door through a magnification lens. The architects were advanced, yes, but their security measures follow predictable patterns. I will have this open within 3 days. Director Vrax nodded eagerly. Whatever resources you require, High Scholar. I require competence, Dinnick said. Something this station seems to lack. 3 months of study and you have learned nothing. Nadia stood at the back of the observation room. She had not been invited to this meeting. She had simply walked in, and no one had cared enough to remove her. She watched Dinnick press his equipment against the vault door. The symbols on its surface flickered, changed. The same subtle shift she had observed before. The vault was responding, but not positively. High Scholar, she said. The symbols are decorative, Dinnick interrupted without turning around. Architect aesthetics, nothing more. Their actual locking mechanisms are technological, not symbolic. He paused. Who is this person? Dr. Okonkwo, Senna said. Our human cultural liaison. Dinnick's tone carried a weight of understanding. The token Earthborn. How progressive of the Concordat. He returned to his work. Perhaps she could fetch refreshments. I prefer cold water with mineral supplements. Nadia's hands curled into fists at her sides. She could feel the other researchers watching her, waiting for her reaction, perhaps hoping for entertainment. She unclenched her hands. She walked to the door. She did not fetch the water. Instead, she went to the station's archives and buried herself in research. Humans had joined the Galactic Concordat 80 years ago. 80 years of being measured and found wanting. Too small, too fragile, too emotional, too short-lived. The other species tolerated humanity the way one might tolerate a stray animal that had wandered into a sophisticated gathering. Useful for simple tasks. Occasionally creative, generally ignorable. Nadia had spent her entire career fighting against this perception. She had earned degrees from the most prestigious institutions. She had published papers that challenged conventional theories. She had proven herself again and again. And still, she was the one expected to fetch water. Her console chimed. A message from her brother on Earth. She opened it and felt tears prick her eyes at the sight of his familiar face. Little sister, he said in the recording. Mom says you sound tired in your messages. She worries. I tell her you're doing important work among the stars. I tell her you will show them what an Okonkwo can do. He smiled. You have never been wrong about the things that matter. Trust yourself. Nadia wiped her eyes and saved the message. That evening, she returned to the vault level. The corridors were empty. Dinnick and his team had retired for the night, confident in their scheduled breakthrough. She stood before the massive door and studied its symbols. They moved constantly now, a slow dance of light and shadow. Beautiful. Alive. What are you waiting for? She whispered. The symbols shifted. For a moment, just a moment, they seemed to form a pattern she almost recognized. Then they scattered again. Nadia pulled up the data she had been collecting. Every interaction with the vault. Every response to external stimuli. A picture was forming. A picture that contradicted everything Dinnick believed. The architects had not been primarily technological. Their records showed a species obsessed with consciousness, emotion, connection. They had built thinking machines. They had mapped the pathways of feeling across 1,000 different brains. They had sought to understand what made beings truly alive. And then they had vanished. No war, no plague, no disaster. They had simply stopped existing, leaving behind only their empty vaults. Empty vaults with doors that waited. Nadia pressed her palm against the cool metal. The surface hummed beneath her touch. The symbols nearest her hand began to glow brighter. "You are not testing our technology," she said softly. "You are testing us." A tremor ran through the door. The glow spread outward from her palm, rippling across the surface like water. Then alarms began to scream. Energy surge detected. All personnel evacuate sublevel 9. Nadia stumbled backward as the door pulsed with blinding light. She turned and ran. Behind her, the vault door began to speak. Not in words, in feelings. A wave of ancient loneliness washed over her. A desperate hope. A terrible, patient waiting. She reached the emergency lift just as security teams rushed past her. No one asked what she had been doing there. No one noticed the tears streaming down her face. The vault had touched her mind. Just for a second. Just long enough to show her what it wanted. Not conquerors. Not scientists. Not scholars who spoke of the architects with casual dismissal that IT wanted someone who could feel, and it was running out of patience. 72 hours. The vault had given them 72 hours. The translation came through just before dawn. Ancient architect symbols, decoded by the station's best linguistic programs, formed a simple message that appeared on every screen on Helix 9. Prove your worth or be purged. Nadia read the words from her quarters. She had not slept. The vault's touch still echoed in her mind. That wave of loneliness and desperate hope. She understood now what the others refused to see. The architects had built more than a vault. They had built a judge. Emergency meetings filled the day. High Scholar Dennick dismissed the message as an automated warning system. Director Vrax ordered increased security protocols. Chief Archaeologist Senna suggested abandoning the site entirely. Nobody asked Nadia for her opinion. She spent the hours in the archives, pulling every record of architects' sites across the galaxy. Dozens of vaults, hundreds of ruins, thousands of artifacts. Most were empty shells, their contents lost or destroyed. But a few had yielded treasures beyond imagination. The pattern emerged slowly. Nadia mapped it on her personal screen, connecting points across centuries of exploration. Every vault that had been forced open became inert. The technology inside crumbled. The knowledge faded. Whatever the architects had left behind died with the intrusion. But the vaults that had been entered peacefully, approached with respect and patience, those vaults opened willingly. Their gifts remained intact. Their secrets were shared freely. The architects had not simply hidden their legacy. They had protected it. They had designed their vaults to recognize worthy successors, and worthy had nothing to do with strength or intelligence or power. Nadia found the key in an obscure archaeological report from 60 years ago. A single sentence, buried in a footnote, dismissed by the original researchers as poetic nonsense. The architects believed that the capacity for emotional connection was the highest form of intelligence. She sat back in her chair and let the truth wash over her. The vault was not testing their technology. It was testing their hearts. In species that had evolved toward dominance, logic, cold calculation, they could not pass the test. They did not even know they were taking it. But humans were different. Humanity had evolved on a world where danger came from everywhere. Predators and prey, storms and droughts, diseases and disasters. They had survived not through strength or speed, but through cooperation, through reading each other's emotions, through connection. Empathy was humanity's greatest survival tool. The thing that other species dismissed as weakness was actually humanity's greatest strength. Nadia needed to tell someone. She needed to make them understand. She found High Scholar Dennick in the primary research lab, surrounded by equipment and assistants. He was preparing something that looked like a weapon. "High Scholar," she said, "I have important information about the vault." He did not look up. I'm certain you do. The architects were not primarily technological. They were psychological. The vault is testing us for emotional capacity, not technical skill. If we approach it with force, we will fail. Now he looked at her. His reptilian eyes were cold. Dr. Okonkwo, I have spent 40 years studying the architects. I have opened more of their sites than any living researcher. And you, a human with 3 months of experience on this station, presume to lecture me? I'm not lecturing. I am trying to help. You are interfering. He stepped closer. He was twice her height. His shadow fell over her like a threat. Return to your quarters. Catalog your files. Stay out of my way. If I hear that you have approached the vault again, I will have you removed from this station permanently. Nadia held her ground. You are making a mistake. The only mistake was allowing your species anywhere near serious research. He turned his back on her. Remove her. Security officers escorted Nadia from the lab. They were not rough, but they were firm. She was deposited in the corridor like unwanted cargo. 48 hours remained. That night, Nadia crept back to sublevel 9. She did not approach the vault directly. She simply sat in the observation room and watched through the reinforced window. The door pulsed with soft light. The symbols moved in patterns that were almost beautiful, almost like music made visible. I know what you want, she whispered. I know what you need, but they will not listen to me. They never listen. The symbol shifted. A new pattern formed. For just a moment, the light seemed to reach toward her. Then alarms screamed. Radiation warnings flashed. The vault was responding to something. Nadia ran to the sensor displays. Dinnick's weapon was powering up. He was going to try to crack the door by force. No, she breathed. No, no, no. She ran toward the vault level. She had to stop them. She had to make them understand. But she was too late. She was always too late. The weapon fired, and the vault began to scream. The explosion tore through the research wing like the hand of an angry god. Nadia was thrown against the corridor wall. Her ears rang. Smoke filled the air. Emergency lights painted everything in bloody red. She crawled through the debris. Around her, researchers stumbled and fell. Some were injured. Some were not moving at all. The vault's response had been immediate and devastating. Dinnick's weapon had fired, and the ancient door had reflected the energy back 100-fold. Half the station's lower levels were now burning wreckage. She found Director Vrax near the primary lift. The Torvani was bleeding from a gash across his scaled face. His confident authority had crumbled into shock. What happened? He demanded. What did Dinnick do? He attacked it, Nadia said. He tried to force the door. I told him not to. I told him it was a mistake. Vrax stared at her. For the first time since she had arrived on the station, he actually seemed to see her. You knew this would happen. I knew something like this could happen. The vault is testing us. It responds to our intentions, our emotions. When we approach with force, it defends itself. That is impossible. The architects have been dead for millions of years. Their technology is not dead. It is waiting. Nadia helped him to his feet. Where is Dinnick? They found the high scholar in the medical bay. He was alive, but barely. Burns covered half his body. His expensive robes were melted ruin. The countdown on every screen had changed. 6 hours remained. The vault had accelerated its judgment that in 6 hours, the station would be purged. Director Vrax called an emergency meeting. What remained of the senior staff gathered in a damaged conference room. Senna was there, 2 of her forearms bandaged. Bragg attended via hologram, trapped in the security section by collapsed corridors. We have no options, Vrax said. Evacuation is impossible in 6 hours. The shuttle bays are damaged. Communications are disrupted. We cannot call for help, and we cannot flee. Then we try again, Senna said. More power, bigger weapons. That approach destroyed half the station. What choice do we have? Silence fell. Nadia looked around the table at these powerful beings. These brilliant minds. They had conquered worlds, discovered secrets of the universe, shaped the destiny of species, and none of them had any idea what to do. I have a choice, Nadia said quietly. Every eye turned to her. Some held contempt. Some held desperation. A few, perhaps, held the first fragile seeds of hope. The vault is not testing our technology, she continued. It is testing our capacity for connection, for empathy. The architects believed that emotional intelligence was the highest form of wisdom. They designed their vaults to open only for those who could feel. Feel what? Brax asked. Everything. Joy, sorrow, love, loss. The ability to understand others, to connect across differences, to care about beings unlike yourself. She took a breath. The other species of the Concordat evolved toward dominance and logic. You survived through strength, through hierarchy, through cold calculation. But humans evolved differently. You evolved to be prey, Senna said. We evolved to cooperate, to read emotions, to understand each other. On our world, empathy was not weakness. It was survival. Nadia stood. I believe I can open the vault. I believe it will recognize me. You, Vrax's voice carried disbelief. The human who fetches water and catalogs files. Yes, the fragile Earthborn, the small one, the insignificant one. She met his eyes without flinching. I'm exactly what the architects were looking for, and you have no other options. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Vrax nodded slowly. If you were wrong, we all die anyway. I'm not wrong. Then do what you must, Dr. Okonkwo. Nadia walked alone toward the vault level. The damaged corridors were empty. Emergency lights flickered. Somewhere behind her, the surviving crew watched on whatever monitors still functioned. She thought of her grandmother. She thought of her brother. She thought of everyone who had ever told her she was too small, too weak, too human. The vault door loomed before her. Its symbols pulsed with angry red light. The countdown read less than 5 hours. Nadia placed her hands against the ancient metal. It was warm, almost alive. I am here, she said softly. I'm not trying to force you. I'm not trying to conquer you. I just want to understand. The light shifted. The red faded toward gold. The test was beginning, and Nadia Okonkwo, the fragile Earthborn, was ready. The vault touched her mind like a gentle hand lifting a veil. Nadia gasped as visions flooded through her. She saw the architects at their height, a civilization of impossible beauty spread across 10,000 worlds. They had conquered disease and death. They had mapped the secrets of reality itself. They had become gods, and then they had looked at what they had created and felt only emptiness. Power had not brought them joy. Knowledge had not brought them peace. They had everything except the one thing that mattered. Connection. In their pursuit of perfection, they had forgotten how to feel. They had optimized their emotions away, considering them inefficient, primitive, unnecessary. And without emotion, they discovered there was no meaning, no purpose, no reason to continue. They had built the vaults in their final days, not to preserve their technology, but to preserve their hope. Somewhere in the galaxy, they believed there might be a species that had not made the same mistake, a species that still knew how to feel. The vision shifted. Nadia saw herself through the vault's perception, a small creature, fragile, brief, but burning with something the architects had lost: empathy, the ability to feel what others feel, to carry another's pain, to share another's joy, to connect across the vast distances of difference. The vault asked her a question without words. It showed her memories, her grandmother dying in a hospital bed. Nadia had held her hand for 3 days. She had felt every labored breath, every moment of fading consciousness. She had not looked away from the pain. She had shared it with a colleague who had stolen her research and claimed it as his own. Nadia had been furious. She had wanted revenge. But when she learned that he was facing bankruptcy, that his daughter was sick, that desperation had driven him to betrayal, she had forgiven him. Not because he deserved it, but because holding hatred was too heavy. An alien child on a transport ship, separated from its family, crying in a language Nadia did not speak. She had sat with it for hours. She had hummed songs from her own childhood. She had not understood its words, but she had understood its fear. And her presence had been enough. The vault showed her each memory and asked the same silent question. Why? Why did you stay with the dying woman? Because she was my grandmother. Because no one should die alone. Why did you forgive the man who wronged you? Because anger is a prison. Because he was suffering too. Why did you comfort the child you could not understand? Because fear is the same in every language. Because kindness costs nothing. The vault was silent for a long moment. Then it showed her one final vision. The architects at the very end. They had built this vault, seeded it with everything they had learned, and programmed it to wait. They had looked at each other with eyes that had forgotten how to cry and tried to remember what hope felt like. And they had said, someday, someone will come who still knows how to feel. Someone small and brief and fragile. Someone who has not yet learned that emotion is weakness. Find them. Open for them. Give them everything we could not give ourselves. The vision faded. Nadia stood before the vault door, tears streaming down her face. The symbols had stopped moving. They formed a single pattern now, clear and unmistakable. Recognized, it said. Worthy. The door began to open. Light poured out. Not the angry red of before, but warm gold, like sunlight through honey. It spread across Nadia's skin and filled her with a sensation of welcome. She stepped inside. The vault was vast beyond imagining. Shelves stretched into darkness, filled with crystals that glowed with stored knowledge. Machines hummed with technology that humanity would need centuries to understand. And at the center of it all, a single pedestal held a sphere of pure light. Nadia approached the sphere. As she drew near, words formed in her mind. This vault is the first of many. We built them across the galaxy, seeded with everything we learned. Technology to heal worlds. Knowledge to bridge species. The wisdom of 10,000 years. A pause. You are now the key. Your psychological and genetic signature has been recorded. Only you can open the remaining vaults. Nadia stared at the sphere. Only me, only those like you. Those who feel as you feel. Those who connect as you connect. Another pause. We searched for 2 million years. You are the first. The weight of it settled on her shoulders. The first, the only, the fragile Earthborn, now holding the legacy of an extinct civilization. What do I do now? She whispered. Share what we could not. Connect what we divided. Heal what we broke. The light pulsed gently. Be what we failed to be. Nadia turned and walked back toward the door. The surviving crew of Station Helix. 9 waited beyond, watching through whatever sensors still functioned. She emerged from the vault carrying nothing visible. But everything had changed. Director Vrax stood at the front of the gathered crowd. His eyes were wide. His scales had paled with shock. Slowly, carefully, he lowered himself to his knees. What we do now, Dr. Okonkwo? Nadia looked at the kneeling Torvani, at the stunned researchers, at the ruined station and the ancient door standing open behind her. She smiled. Now, she said, we have work to do. 6 months had passed since the vault opened. Nadia stood on the bridge of her new ship, a sleek vessel provided by the Galactic Concordat. Through the observation windows, stars stretched into infinity. Somewhere ahead, the coordinates from the first vault pointed toward a second. Her crew worked around her. A young Elorian named Tessa handled navigation. She had been the only researcher on Helix, 9 who had treated Nadia with kindness, and now she was the first to join the new mission. Others had followed. A Molthari engineer who had spent decades being told his ideas were too unconventional. A Torvani scientist whose research had been dismissed as overly emotional. Beings from a dozen species, all of them overlooked, underestimated, told they did not fit the mold of proper researchers. Nadia had given them a different path. First Seeker. Tessa's voice interrupted her thoughts. We are approaching Vreni space. Their patrol ships are hailing us. Nadia nodded. The Vreni were not members of the Concordat. They were territorial, aggressive, suspicious of outsiders. The second vault lay within their borders, and no one had been able to negotiate access. The Concordat had offered military escort. Nadia had refused. Open a channel, she said. The view screen flickered. A Vreni commander appeared. Sharp teeth. 4 arms. Eyes that burned with hostility. You enter our territory without permission, the commander said. Turn back or be destroyed. My name is Nadia Okonkwo. I'm the first seeker of the Architect legacy. I request permission to approach the ancient site within your borders. We know what you seek. The Concordat has demanded access for centuries. We have always refused. I am not the Concordat. Nadia stepped closer to the screen. I'm not here to take anything from you. I am here to share something with you. The commander's eyes narrowed. Share? What could you possibly offer that we would want? Knowledge, technology, healing. Nadia paused. The architects left their legacy for anyone worthy to claim it. They did not intend it for one species or one government. They intended it for everyone. Pretty words. But the Concordat has always hoarded power. I am not the Concordat, Nadia repeated. I am a human. My species has been part of the galaxy for less than a century. We have no power to hoard. We have only ourselves. The commander studied her. Something shifted in those hostile eyes. You are small, he said. Fragile. Why would the architects choose you? Because I can feel what you feel. Nadia held his gaze. Right now, you are afraid. Not of me, of what I represent. Change is frightening. The unknown is frightening. You have protected your borders for so long that the idea of opening them feels like death. The commander said nothing. But isolation is also death, Nadia continued. Slower, quieter. The architects learned that lesson too late. They had everything except connection. They died surrounded by their treasures alone. She spread her hands. I am not asking you to trust the Concordat. I am asking you to trust yourself. Come with me to the vault. See what the architects left behind. Make your own choice about what to do with it. Silence stretched across the void between ships. Then the commander spoke. One ship, no weapons. You will be accompanied by our escort. Agreed. The channel closed. Tessa let out a breath she had been holding. How did you know that would work? She asked. Nadia smiled. I did not know. I hope. The second vault opened 3 days later. Nadia stood before the ancient door with a Vreni commander beside her. His name was Gareth. He had been fighting for his people since before Nadia was born. He had killed more enemies than he could count. He had never once considered that he might be wrong about anything. Place your hand on the door, Nadia said. It will not work. I am not human. The vault does not test species. It tests individuals. She met his eyes. You have spent your life protecting your people. That is love. You have sacrificed everything for their safety. That is connection. Somewhere beneath all that armor, Commander, you know how to feel. Gareth hesitated. Then he pressed his palm against the ancient metal. The door pulsed with light. Symbols shifted and swirled. Gareth's eyes went distant as the vault touched his mind. Nadia watched his expression change. She saw the moment when decades of warfare crumbled before visions of possibility. She saw tears form in eyes that had forgotten how to cry. The door opened. Together, Nadia said. We go in together. They emerged an hour later. Gareth carried a data crystal containing technology that would revolutionize Vreni medicine. His hands trembled. Why, he asked. Why would you share this freely? Because power hoarded is power wasted. Nadia touched his arm gently. The architects learned that too late. We do not have to repeat their mistake. Word spread across the galaxy. The human first seeker was not building an empire. She was building bridges. Species that had dismissed humanity began requesting partnerships. Governments that had competed for millennia started talking about cooperation. The vaults kept opening, each one yielding more treasures, each one requiring the same simple price: connection. Empathy. The willingness to feel that a year after the first vault opened, Nadia stood on the bridge of her ship and looked out at the stars. Her crew had grown. Her mission had expanded. And somewhere in her grandmother's journal, the words still waited. They will try to make you small. Stay soft anyway. Tessa appeared beside her. Coordinates confirmed for the third vault. Ready when you are? First seeker. Nadia touched the journal in her pocket. She thought of her grandmother, who had dreamed impossible dreams. She thought of her brother, who had believed in her when no one else did. She thought of all the beings across the galaxy who were just now learning that strength did not require hardness. The fragile had become the foundation. The soft had worn down the stone. Set course, Nadia said. We have a galaxy to connect. The ship jumped to light speed. carrying its small human captain toward the stars, and the universe, for the first time in millions of years, began to heal.